Today I'm joined in the studio by Microsoft's international ergonomist, Dr. Dan ODell. Welcome to Australia.
Thank you very much.
Now, Dan, I can't imagine there are many ergonomists out there. What exactly does it involve, and how did you arrive at that as a career?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, so ergonomics is just the science of understanding how people work and trying to go back and match people's capabilities with the jobs that they do. I got my start in the field by actually getting an injury myself. I was working for several years designing exercise equipment as a mechanical engineer, working on CAD all day. I didn't know this at the time, but my desk was set too high, and I wound up kind of elevating my shoulder as I worked like this. And over the course of several years, it kind of led me to a chronic shoulder problem. It really sparked my interest in ergonomics, and then I pursued it through grad school and then on to my job at Microsoft.
So now you're obviously working with Microsoft as their resident ergonomist. What products that people might know have you been sort of directly involved with?
I've been at Microsoft a little over 5.5 years, and I've basically worked on every keyboard that has come out during that time, as well as the natural mouse and a couple other mice. So I'd say my biggest successes were the first product I worked on when I came in was to finish up the natural ergonomic keyboard 4000, which had been started by my predecessor, Hugh McClune. I worked on the wireless entertainment desktop 8000. Like I mentioned, the first natural mouse. Really proud of that one for sure, as well as some of the other keyboard products.
Do you ever clash with the technical side of things when putting together a product like that?
Oh, yeah. There's always a natural tension. I work with industrial designers who are always focused on making the products aesthetic in addition to the functionality. So there's always a natural tension there of how do we make the products as functional and usable and aesthetic, and then additional bringing in the engineers, like how do we make it so that it's manufacturable and we can actually get it to people at reasonable prices.
Fair enough. So at what point do you think the world sort of woke up and thought, well, keyboards and mice need to be comfortable as well as functional and nice to look at?
So a lot of it happened kind of in the early 90s, I think, where you started actually seeing problems with people getting injuries in the workplace. There was a lot of interest at that time in kind of exploring the issues and understanding what the causes were. And so it very much started with the keyboards. You saw a large proliferation of split keyboards at that time. Microsoft made its first split keyboard in 1994, which is kind of right in that same time frame. And then as user interfaces have kind of changed, it used to be very keyboard focused, but over the years, obviously, graphical user interfaces became much more common, and now you actually see people spending about 3 times as much time working on the mouse as they do the keyboard. So we've kind of shifted our focus, and in addition to doing good ergonomic keyboard design, we've introduced the natural mouse and some other comfort features in our mice.
So let's talk about the importance of an ergonomic workspace. What's important and which people should be listening to this advice? So,
in my opinion, everybody should be listening to this advice. If you spend a lot of time on the computer, which is really almost everybody, in the U.S. we find people report that they spend an average of about 6 hours a day on the computer. And in Australia, we've done some recent work and found 40% of people report that they spend between 6 and 8 hours a day. So people are spending a lot of time on the computer. That's one of the key risk factors you want to look at. And then when you spend a lot of time on the computer, you definitely want to get your workstation right. So you're reducing all the other risk factors so you can work as comfortably as possible over long periods of time.
So what are some of the basics to get this workstation right, to say typical office work?
Right. So basically the rule of thumb is you start from the ground and work your way up. So you want to get yourself a good, comfortable chair. You want to get it set at the appropriate height so that your feet are firmly on the ground and you feel comfortable without many pressure points. After that, you want to set your desk to the appropriate height so that it's roughly set at the height of your elbows. And if you can't set your desk, if you have a fixed surface desk, you can instead adjust your chair a little bit higher so that the work surface is roughly elbow height, and then instead use a footstool so that your feet are firmly supported. As I mentioned, the work surface height was the problem that contributed to my shoulder injury. So that's one that you see very commonly, and I really caution people to look out for. Because most fixed desks are set at a height that was originally designed for working with handwriting and not for using with the computer.
So we'll talk about the ergonomics working with keyboards and mice. What do we need to look for there?
So the key thing is, again, when you're working for those long hours, you want to reduce the other risk factors. So you want to make sure you're working with good posture and you're working without any static loads on your body. So you want to be supported while you're working. So on the keyboard side, usually I'm sure you've seen the diagrams of people working with wrists kinked out like this or flexed. You don't want to do that. Your wrist should remain fairly straight. And if you're using a split or a curved keyboard, they definitely have been shown to help promote those neutral wrist postures.
What are some of the signs that you might encounter that your workspace isn't correct?
So you start to see a number of things like a little bit of pain for sure, which you may or may not associate with computer use. A lot of times you'll see people's hands get very cold when they're working on a workstation, which is an indicator that their circulation isn't getting through to their hands, which can be an indicator. You see, part of the reason that people don't pay so much attention to office ergonomics some of the time is some of the symptoms kind of crop up in weird ways. Like, for instance, one that is more common than you might think is when you wake up in the middle of the night and your arms are numb or feel like asleep. A lot of time that's actually an indicator of an office ergonomics problem. But it happens in the middle of the night, so you don't associate it with something that you've been doing during the day. You just maybe assume that you slept on your arm funny or something, right? So yeah, kind of the standard like numbness, tingling, redness, irritation, pain in the hands are some of the things that you want to look out for, and commonly in the neck and shoulders area, in addition to hand and arm.
Okay, and do you find that these health issues related to ergonomics are on the rise then?
We haven't exactly been tracking those stats in the U.S., so it's a little difficult for me to say they're on the rise. But they're definitely common issues, and anecdotally, I hear a lot about it. A group here in Australia did a recent survey asking people about pain associated with computer workstations, and they found that 49% of people reported having some kind of pain associated with their computers. And that's kind of similar to what we see in the U.S. There was a big study done back in 2002 where they followed almost 300 new computer workers over the course of a year. And during that period of time, they found that I believe 62% of people experience some sort of pain within their first year of working with a computer. So the pain is pretty prevalent. Where
could people go now to find out more about ergonomics and their health, along with tips for maybe a better computing experience?
We have several resources available on our website, Microsoft.com/hardware. And then if you do /ergonomics, there are a number of documents we have there that give kind of pointers on things to look out for. There are a few other really good online references available for people to look at too. I think Hewlett-Packard has a particularly excellent one, hp.com/ergo, or ergoweb.com is another kind of generic ergo interest group.
Great. Dr. Dan ODell, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much.